Hello there, boys and girls. Welcome to iTTV. In today's exciting lesson, I'll be talking to you and solving some problem questions under parallel lines. It is very important for you students to pay extra attention because we are going to attempt some difficult questions in this lesson. Let us look into the first question. Calculate the values of the unknowns in the following diagrams. Give reasons for your answers. Well, boys and girls, in our first question, we have to identify what is the value of x and the value of y and giving reasons for your answer. If you look closely in this diagram, we have two parallel lines. Let me put it in red so that it is easily visible to you. We have two parallel lines here. Now, if you note that this parallel line looks in the shape of a squared U. Now, if you remember the concept of U, that is the interior angles, the sum of interior angles should give you 180 degrees. As such, in order for me to obtain the value of x, I take 180 less 109, I get an answer 71 degrees. And the reason being, x and 109 are interior angles. This is the easy part. Let's look into y. Now, obviously, in my earlier lessons, I've mentioned to you that in mathematics, all values have to be accounted for. Therefore, at the back of your head, you must ask yourself, how is 131 degrees is relevant in finding y? If you look closely on 131, what we can say is, if I were to draw another angle here, I would say that this is vertically opposite angle to 131. As such, the value here would amount to 131. The next step is, since these two lines are parallel, I can draw another line across here, that is the transversal. As such, this parallel line and this parallel line together with the transversal will form the letter F. If you remember, the letter F connotes corresponding angle. And being corresponding angle, both values are equal. As such, y is equivalent to 131 degrees because y is a corresponding angle to 131 degrees. Let's move on to the next question. Calculate the values of the unknowns in the following diagrams. Give reasons for your answers. If you look into our next question, we have two parallel lines and the issue of isosceles triangle is coming into play. Now, how am I going to find for the value of y? In order for me to find y at this top end, obviously, since this two line indicates that the triangle is an isosceles triangle. As such, I need to obtain the values of one of these values. Since it's an isosceles triangle, both these values are equal. So how do we find it? If you look on closer examination, we have two parallel lines, one on my right and the other on my left. Or what we can do, we can bring down this line this way. As such, we have a Z formation. We have a Z formation. Being a Z formation, it is an alternate angle. Therefore, the value of this particular angle is equivalent to 35 degrees because it is an alternate angle. Proceeding from there, since this is an isosceles triangle, this portion of the angle would also be equals to 35. As such, you know the sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. In order for me to find y, I take 180 degrees minus 35 from this side and minus 35 from that side. And the total for y, I will obtain 110 degrees. This is how we do for y. Let's move on to the next question. Calculate the values of the unknowns in the following diagrams. Give reasons for your answers. Well, boys and girls, if you look into this question, we have two unknowns, those being x and y, and we have an angle amounting to 70 degrees. Question is, how am I going to find for x and y? If you look very closely, x is situated in two parallel lines, those being this parallel line, and we have another parallel line this way. If I were to draw a transversal on those parallel lines, I can observe that this forms an interior angle. Therefore, both values of x and 70 forms an interior angle in the shape of a squared U. Concept being, interior angles, the sum of interior angles amounts to 180. As such, there are two x's, therefore 2x is equals to 180 minus 70, you should obtain 110. But the question wants you to find for 1x value. Therefore, x is equals to 110 divided by 2, we should obtain 55 degrees. Next on the question, how do we obtain y? If you look closely, y and x are located on a straight line. In our earlier lessons, I've mentioned to you that the sum of angles on a straight line amounts to 180. As such, in order for me to find the value of y, I take 180 degrees less 55, that is one value of x, I will obtain y equals to 125 degrees. Let's proceed to the next question. Calculate the values of the unknowns in the following diagrams. Give reasons for your answer. Well, boys and girls, let us now turn our attention to our next question. If you look very closely to this question, there are so many numbers and alphabets that we need to deal with. Firstly, we need to find the unknowns for x and y, and we are given values of 40 degrees and 97 degrees. So how then are we going to find the values of x and y then? On closer examination, we note that y is located in this triangle. We have two parallel lines. Let me just indicate it in red. We have one parallel line running across here and the other on this side. Now, the next question that we need to ask ourselves is, how am I going to find for value of y? If you look closely, I know y and this particular angle here are vertically opposites. Therefore, in order for me to find for y, I need to find this value first. Why is that so? Because in the diagram, I can observe that both this unknown angle and the value of y are vertically in nature. So therefore, in order for me to find for y, I need to find this angle first. On closer examination, I also note that this line is a straight line. As such, being a straight line, the sum of angles on a straight line should give you 180 degrees. Therefore, in order for me to find the unknown angle, I take 180 degrees minus 97 and minus 40 on those lines. I should obtain a 43 degrees. Since the value of this unknown angle is 43 degrees, and since I've mentioned to you earlier that both this 43 degrees and angle Y are vertically opposite angles, therefore Y should also carry the same amount, that being 43 degrees, and the reason being Y is vertically opposite angle to that 43 degrees. I hope you have taken down some interesting notes here, particularly the issue of vertically opposite angles. Secondly, the issue of the sum of angles on a straight line. Please do remember, boys and girls, the issue of vertically opposite angles many a times comes in your questions, and you have to be prudent and smart enough to observe all this information in the diagram. Likewise, angles on a straight line also comes out very frequently in your examination. Let us move on to find the value of x. How can I find the value of x then? On closer examination, I note that since these two lines are parallel, and if I were to draw a transversal from x all the way out here, so I have a transversal and two parallel lines. And what can you observe? You can observe that there is a letter F coming into play. Where is the letter F? If you note, we have this line, transversal, and another parallel line. So you can observe there is a F being formed. As such, this value of 40 should be equivalent to the value of x, because when you're talking about the letter F, indirectly we are saying that these two angles are corresponding in nature, and being corresponding angles, both values must be equal in nature. As such, x is equals to 40 degrees, reason being x and the 40 degrees are corresponding angles. So you see, students, it is not that difficult in order for us to answer these questions. All you need to do here is you have to look out for the angles given, and you must ask yourself, how are these angles given are related to the unknowns given. In the event if you are not able to determine the values of x and y, you may want to try out another method. Perhaps you may not want to use corresponding angles. You may try out example alternate angles, or even interior angles if the question permits you to do so. You may have variations, so another student or another boys and girls may want to try it out in another way. But whatever way that you try out, the answer must amount to 43 for y and 40 for x. So my idea here is you have to be creative in finding the answers for this question. Let us then move on to our next question. Calculate the values of the unknowns in the following diagrams. Give reasons for your answer. Well, boys and girls, if you look into our final question for our lesson today, you will observe that there are two parallel lines, and on closer examination, you also note that there is an existence of a triangle. This is an isosceles triangle. So, therefore, how are we going to obtain the unknowns D and F? Having obtained D and F, what are the reasons for our answer then? If you look for F first, you note that there are two parallel lines. Let me draw it out for you in red. We have this line and we have another line at the top. Now, how am I going to relate these two lines? How am I going to link them up together? Perhaps I may need to draw another line across like this. So, if you look very closely, I have a Z being formed. You know that Z means alternate angles. So therefore, being an alternate angle, F and 35 should be equal. Therefore, the value of F is equals to 35. The reason being both F and 35 degrees are alternate angles in nature. Let's move on in finding for the letter D. I've told you earlier in the lesson, for this particular question, we have what I call an isosceles triangle. We have an isosceles triangle this way. Why do I say it's an isosceles triangle? Because of these two particular indication here. Whenever you note that there are two lines on this triangle, it notes that this is an isosceles triangle. Being an isosceles triangle, we know two values must be equal. What two values those are? Firstly, for 35 degrees, here for F should be equal to 35 here as well. Therefore, since this is a triangle, the concept here is the sum of angles in a triangle must be 180 degrees. Therefore, in order for me to find the value of D, I take 180 degrees minus 35 from F and minus 35 on this side. I should obtain 110 degrees for the letter D. So in conclusion, the value for F is 35 because F is an alternate angle with 35 this side, and the value of D is equals to 110 simply because the triangle that we are dealing with here is an isosceles triangle. Having found both values of 35 here, in order to find D, we take 180 less these two 35s. I should obtain 110 degrees. So therefore, boys and girls, this is how we attempt this question. Firstly, you must observe the type of triangles if it exists in the question. Sometimes or most of the time it would be an isosceles triangle. Secondly, you must observe the type of parallel lines and the type of angles that is being formed. It could be an alternate angle issue or a corresponding angle issue, and finally an interior angle issue that need to be decided by yourself. So therefore, in order to answer any type of questions, you have to watch out for this type of issues being raised. So therefore, students, you have to be prudent and you have to be creative in finding for a solution. Therefore, boys and girls, we have come to the end of our lesson today. I hope to see you in another exciting lesson to come. Until then, bye from me.